let's go. Hottie love in the house, dropping knowledge and facts, uncovering the truth, no need for acting lax. She ain't afraid to speak her mind, breaking through the lies, rising up with love, taking us to new highs. We're living in a world full of secrets and deceit, but Hottie's here to expose, bringing truth to the beast. She's got a message, spreading it far and wide, from addiction to hope, she's on the other side. Ooh, yeah.
First off, let me say I missed you. Thank you for joining me again.
Of
Always a
course.
great time. Love you, girl.
Yes.
I saw on the Let's Get Freaky podcast. I actually follow him and I try to keep up with
yeah.
his shows because he's such a fun
He's a
podcaster.
nice person. Yes.
Really nice person. And I saw that you had went on there
Yeah.
and it said something about Minerva attachment. And I didn't even listen to the episode because I want to have a genuine reaction, but I'm very interested in what this is.
This is a weird true story, and this is like something that I shared it a long time ago when I first started with Davy Wavy, and it was just audio only, and that's okay, but like I think this presentation will solidify a lot of things for people because they'll be like, okay, she's not just full of crap and making this up. Like, because that's how it sounds, to be honest. If I heard somebody tell this story, I'd be like, cool story, bro.
Right.
I would. And
The
so I
doubters.
made a slideshow for you because I was like, you know what? I'm going to make something cool for her. So if I can share my screen, I'm going to show you while I talk because it is weird. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. I always have to find the stuff on here because I'm so used to
I
StreamYard.
am already interested. I
Let's
love
see. There it is.
slideshows.
Yes, and this way, like, it just helps, like, actually show you what I'm talking about. Like, otherwise, it's just like my word, and that's okay, but it's not the best. So,
Trust but verify.
yes, and so it helps us to be able to go over it piece by piece because it's quite a wild story and it's a fun little time. So,
Oh, good.
this was from our trip in Italy. We went to Italy in 2019 with my daughter, who I cut out of the photo for anonymity purposes because this is still private. There is a private thing that's going to be talked about coming up, and she does speak about it. She does advocate for people, and she does tell her story. Otherwise, I would not tell parts of this story. So I do have permission, sort of, to do that. So this is a tour guide. This random guy, he walked up to us, and this guy is, let me go to the next picture and you'll understand. This is him with Kourtney Kardashian. And he is a tour guide, in Rome. And we were just standing at a place while my husband got us sandwiches. We were two girls alone. This big hunky guy comes up, and this is him. And I'm like, you cannot talk to us. You have to walk away, like, or stand by my daughter. Just get away from me. Because two things about my husband: anybody more jacked than my husband, he hates. And he doesn't like brown haired, like the tall, dark, and handsome guys because he's got red hair and he's 5'9". So he has a thing and he doesn't love that. So he's not normally jealous, but this situation would make him not happy.
Oh, well, come on. He looks like
I mean,
he looks like he could walk the runway.
Right. Yes. He is. You bring that up. And the funny thing is he is a tour guide, but as you saw, he was with Kourtney Kardashian. He's been in Gladiator. And so he's with this guy. Yeah, this guy's on Gladiator. And then this next one, he's in his costume. So he's called the Gladiator Guide. And so anyway, he walks up to us and he says, "Hey, you guys want to go on our little tour?" And I'm like, "Get away from us." Nice pickup line, like, go away. And so he's like, "No, no, no." And I'm like, if you're talking to her, just talk to her. I'm going to walk over here. And he's like, "No, I do tours." And I'm like, "Okay." Like, cause you see how he looks. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, "No, it starts soon. Like, if you want to come, this is like, I live here. This is like my town. I do a really cool tour. It's usually exclusive, but I didn't fill it up tomorrow." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "So if you want to," and I'm thinking we're just going to get scammed, like out of
Or you're going to get sex trafficked.
something. And I'm like, well, with my husband coming back, he saw my husband because, and my husband's big too. And he's like, okay, he's probably not going to sex traffic us, but like, because my husband's there and he's kind of like, what's happening? So we explained it to him and it wasn't too expensive. It wasn't exactly cheap. I think it was like $70 a piece or something. And so we do this tour, and it was all set up, and we go, and he does this kind of more off the beaten path tour. And so this is one of the buildings he took us to. And I erased my last name, obviously, but I wanted to show that I really was here. Okay, so this is off of my Facebook. And this is in April 2019 when we were in Rome. I'm going to be standing on the stairs of somewhere, which I'll tell you in 1 second, but it's from the other. I am literally standing on the stairs of this church taking this picture because he took us on this really cool tour. And I have to admit, it was great. So see here how this says Santa Maria Sopra Minerva, Rome. This is off of some, I just grabbed it off the internet. And you can see it's the same photo, but the building behind it is the building I was standing on because I took the picture going the other way. So that's why the buildings are two different colors. So the background in the other one is this building because I'm standing on these steps right here. And so anyways, at the time, meant nothing to me. Also, FYI to people, I didn't start my podcast until it hasn't even been a year. And so I didn't do conspiracies. I was not awake. I didn't know anything. I just thought the Kardashians were cool and like everything was normal and that they weren't witches and stuff.
Were you still Mormon at this point?
No, out of the Mormon church. And so none of that, out of the Mormon church. And we're just standing here, and we got out of this church and I took that picture. And then we went to this place, which is again, the Santa Maria Sopra Minerva. It's one of the major churches of the Order of Preachers in Rome, Italy. The church's name derives from the fact that they built the structure on the site that was over the ruins of a temple dedicated to the Egyptian goddess Isis, which has been ascribed to as the goddess Minerva. So
whoa.
Yeah, we're going to go deep. This gets
Let me
weird.
read this one more time, and I'll read it out loud just so I can comprehend. Santa Maria Sopra Minerva is one of the major churches of the Order of the Preachers in Rome, Italy. The church's name derives from the fact that the first Christian church structure on the site was built directly over the ruins or foundations of a temple dedicated to the Egyptian god Isis. Now, I did an episode on this. They're always doing this. They build on the foundations of previous temples and structures because of the energy there.
Yes.
And I think that's very significant. My mind is already blown. Continue.
It's wild. And the Isis is also known as Minerva. So just keep that in mind for people because they like to switch these names around. And when we went, we didn't get to go in the front door. And at first, I have to tell you, we knew it was built over a temple, didn't care. We went to the Pantheon and thousands of places. Like we've been to so many places that worship everything everywhere. And I did add some photo slides at the bottom of this. Just to show you some more pics of Rome because it's so cool. And I know you're into like old history and stuff. So after we get done with this fun thing, but I didn't know for certain if this was even something like I had no clue of what this was. Okay. Because we had to go in the back door because this was under construction. As you can see on the sides, the scaffolding, we didn't go in the front door. So at first I didn't even put two and two together. So didn't know about Minerva, just knew it was built over temple grounds. That's all. And I thought it was a cool church. And I took these pictures myself. This is my picture. And this is my picture, which I find extremely interesting now because as above, so below, it has this weird staircase. It goes down up one and up the other, Also, if you look at it, it sort of resembles like a womb if you look at it weirdly, but that's whatever. That's just my brain now. But it was creepy in there. I will tell you, it had like a really creepy feeling. And there's, of course, dead saints and everything in all these buildings. So it was weird, but like cool weird. It wasn't like I wasn't scared or anything. This is us, and we're at the Pantheon. And so this is like that same day. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and these are like literally in the streets, like these old ruins just falling down. Like you can see people in the back way and then the entrance to these old crazy buildings. It's amazing. Like 10 out of 10 recommend Rome and Paris. Lovely time. And Venice was cool too. But this tour, he takes us, and at the end of the tour, he's like, I'm going to take you guys to this dinner place, and it's local, and she owns it. And this old lady made us dinner. she
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he's like, you can't ask what's on the menu, and you just eat what she brings. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 7,000 allergies. Not really, but I have some pretty bad ones. And I was like, oh, okay, but I'm allergic to seafood and rice and all this crazy stuff. So I just
And
had people.
just so you know,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
human toe stew tonight.
Yeah,
Eat it and
exactly.
say nothing. Eat it and
And
say nothing.
And this lady, he shows us like this weird, like back entrance way, which goes down into this deep dungeon thing. It was scary, but cool. And he's like, oh, this is haunted in here and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. But I just snapped the picture of the lady because she was so cute. I was like, she would have never posed for that. She would have killed me. But I just
She
hurried and took
looks
it.
like she can cook.
She could cook. It was good. And this is again him doing the tour, so you can see that I really am on the tour. Like people with their little earphones in, he's talking up front, like this is all legit. So this is just more pictures of us on this tour. And so we're there, we're having a great time and everything, and nothing is crossing my mind weird whatsoever. But my daughter was acting a little strange, and she had just met another this guy, and he walked up to her at a crowded airport and said, the God told me if I didn't talk to you I would regret it for the rest of my life. Okay, first of all, he's a pilot, and she had had a rape from a pilot previously to this and was just barely going back to work. Okay, and I was shocked she even talked to the guy, like, and didn't run screaming because trauma. And she was just like, oh, and then she said to me, Mom, I met this guy, and he seems cool but kind of nerdy. I'm just showing these pictures as I'm talking. Cool but kind of nerdy, and should I talk to him again? And I'm like, well, yeah, give him a chance, why not? Boy, I should have said no. But whatever, didn't know. So he becomes pretty significant to her at this time while we're on this trip. And she's just, like I said, barely getting over this severe trauma. And it was really bad. And so it was the pilots that she flew with. She remembers having one drink and nothing else until she woke up on a cold bathroom floor. And she was
What?
medically damaged. Yeah, she was drugged for sure. Yep.
And
And
this was just before you guys went on this trip.
about 6 months. She had been off
Oh,
for
that's like
months.
just before. To me,
Mhm.
that's like still fresh.
Oh, because she was like unable to work. She had medical problems after that occurred that made her not even be able to work for 4 months. Like not mental, like medical. And so, let alone mental. And so when she went back, I was like kind of surprised that she did talk to him, but that was fine. They weren't really serious, but there was a change in her attitude at this point. Like me and her were best friends. I'm only 20 years older than her. We grew up together basically. And she was just this great kid. And I, had a really great time being with her always. Not that everything was always perfect or roses, whatever. Parents screw up all the time. I'm no different than that. But so when we're on this trip, she acted a little bit funny. And I was like, huh, I can't figure it out. Here's the guy
Did you
again.
think maybe she was acting funny just from like everything that had happened, or you think she
Yeah,
was acting funny because of this new guy that had entered her life?
I felt like both. I felt like she was still healing and everything was still, like you said, new and changing. So I really kind of blew it off and didn't really stress a whole lot about it at that point. And I'm not always the most patient person. I'll be certain to say that. Like it's not in my nature to always be. I'm a nurse. I'm there to take care of things, but I'm not always gushy gushy. Like I'm really not as a mom. I love my kids. I tell them I love them all the time, but I'm like very man-brained or something. Like take care of the problem, right?
Right,
And
fix
so,
like a
yeah.
fixer.
I'm a fixer for sure. And so she went home after this trip and it was fine. And then this was in April and then they were still dating. And then I met him one time on our way home from Italy at breakfast and he seemed really nice. He seemed like, you know, he was great and everything, no problems, but it just was very rapid, just breakfast. And so, you know, as much as you can learn about someone at breakfast, I did learn that he is from a banking family. He is from back east, and one of his parents is a vice president of the bank of a very small town. So basically, very important in that town.
Mm.
And I was just getting into my little conspiracy phase. And I know I spoke to him about a couple things. I spoke to him about Freemasonry. I spoke to him about me exiting the church. And I spoke to him about a couple things like that and how they interplayed together. But I really didn't think anything about it. And everything was fine for a while, but she seemed more distant from us. And then we had another trip planned in June, and this was in Crescent City, California. And this is a view from the cabin. And when I tell you about this cabin is off woods as it comes. Like the generator is solar. Like it is off woods. Like there's no one around. Bigfoot probably lives there. I don't know. It was crazy spooky. And it's right next to the Smith River. And I mean, like directly next to it. Like there's
What
like a
was
patio.
the gap in time between the Rome trip and the California trip?
So we got home from Rome and Venice in like 1st of May. And we
And
went on
that's
this
when you
other,
had the breakfast with the guy.
yes. And then we went on this other trip in June, the first week of June. So not much apart at all. And
Okay.
so we're just you know, going for the family and it was fun. It was just supposed to be like a fun little trip. And this is the view from the cabin. So you can see how off-grid this is. This is like the redwood forest. It's really close by Bohemian Grove area. It's right by the Smith River, like all this weird stuff.
I
And during
will
this
say
trip,
it
yeah.
looks beautiful.
Oh, it was fantastic. This was a fantastic time. And, you know, these windows are gigantic. And so you can see out forever. You know, it's just, I mean, they're huge. And so we're sleeping in this cabin that night. And all of a sudden I hear this banging, but this banging was like terrifying. This banging was so loud. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to break the window. Like it's got to be a bear or something. I don't know. It's terrifying. So there's like a loft bedroom. See how that loft is up at the top there? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the kids were sleeping and they heard it too. So our bedroom was down to the left and the kids were directly above us. And I heard the boom was like 2:30-ish in the morning. The kids heard it. They're screaming. Nobody else heard it. I had to wake up my husband. I'm like, come on, like a bear is seriously going to kill us. Like you have to get up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know if these windows can shatter. I just don't know. And so as the kids are screaming upstairs, the 10 and like 8-year-old, well, maybe she was like 11 and 9, but they were close like that. And they're yelling. My oldest girl, the one that I told you was with us, she slept up there too. She sits straight up in bed, like she's awake, like sits up and goes, Minerva, no, and just lays back down. And that's it. And we thought it was hysterical. Like you have to remember this. I'm not conspiracy. I don't know anything about this stuff. Okay. Like nothing other than that was like an old, you know, god or whatever. I didn't know anything about it. And so I didn't really care, you know, like whatever. I thought it was funny.
She was sleeping, the banging happened, and then she just sat up in bed and said that?
Minerva, no. And my kids were hysterical about this. You have to understand when you've got an almost 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, the rest of the trip, all we heard for like every hour on the hour was Minerva, no, You know, they were just
Mm.
hysterical about this. So we all thought it was pretty funny. I mean, I will admit it was pretty funny. And so I didn't think anything of it. Like I said, I told my husband, you have to get up and go look, blah, blah, blah. We kind of peeked out the windows. We weren't going outside. There's no help like in this area at all. And so I'm like, don't go outside, you know, just make sure like nothing's going to break through the door or whatever. So the next morning he goes out and he's like, there's no way that an animal of any sort did that. And I said, why? It was definitely something big. Like you didn't hear the banging. And he said, because those windows are like 50 feet in the air. And I'm like,
Mm.
what? And I didn't even think, you know, I didn't even think about that. He's like, there's no way. He's like, because it came from the side of the house, not the front. And I said, you have to check again because I clearly heard it where we were sleeping. And he's like, there's no way because it's up a level and it had to be like an owl hit the window or something, but then it would be dead. I mean, it was loud and it happened more than once. And so I was like, whatever, this is crazy. But, you know, we let it go. The kids were still hysterically laughing. We had other stuff to do. This is the night that it happened. We were out at a fire before we went to bed, and it's a full moon on top of it. So, and I didn't
Whoa.
remember that. I just found this photo and I was like, oh, I guess it was a full moon. So, I mean, whatever. But you see how high up the patio raises it up, let alone on the other side where
It's
these
like
windows.
the entire cabin is lifted on
Yes.
like
Mhm.
a lifted deck. So,
Yes.
yeah, no, I get it. The windows are way up in the air, even
Way
from
up.
ground level.
Yeah, he said there was no way. And on the side we heard it, he said it would have made more sense if it came from the front, but on the other side is the door that you go in, and there isn't like this big deck on that side. It ends. And so he's like, if it was on the other side, you guys are crazy or something. And I'm like, okay, well, I wasn't drinking and I don't do anything else. So I'm pretty sure I heard what I heard. So and
Mhm.
he was just like, that's silly, blah, 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 you know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. And I just let it go. Right. So I want to wait on this. Don't read it yet. So the next thing that happens is this all happened in June. And by November, right after Thanksgiving, my daughter never spoke to me again. This man that she met got engaged to her, and she had been changing and changing. Like, I know, like, holidays came and went, and she was really good about calling home. And we still had little kids at the time. Like, we had a 6-year-old, and she would never miss calling and being like, how was this or how was that? You know, she was so cute with her. And I'm like, you really hurt her feelings. Like, well, sorry, we were in a helicopter delivering baskets for blah blah blah. And I'm like, rich people shit. Okay, nothing against rich people.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, like, we're not rich, we're just normal. And it felt kind of crappy. But I was just like, oh, that's nice. But could you call your sister for 5 minutes? You know, like, I wasn't mean. And I just was like, this is weird. And then it kept getting worse and worse. And I'm like, something is up. Like, she wouldn't be returning phone calls. She wasn't interacting. This is a girl that called me 3 times a day to ask me what color shoes to wear. Like, she was just, you know, we were tight. And so it was weird. It was a drastic change. And so it was like, well, is it because of the trauma? Is it because of I mean, you're trying to figure it out as a parent, and you're also trying to kind of let it go because she's in a new relationship. It's taking up, you know, you kind of understand, but at the same time, you like want to set it straight, you know? Well,
Mhm.
with them getting engaged, I was like, hey, we haven't even met his family yet. Like, you guys are talking about getting engaged, and I've never set eyes on his parents, either one. Like, I would at least like to know, you know, where you're going to live, because they're talking about moving her clear back east. And I mean, the furthest east you can go. And I'm clear in Utah. And then, oh, the wedding can't be in Utah, even though the bride pays for it, the family, and all this stuff. Like, everything was like, it has to be at my church. It has to be in my town. It has to be my way. It has to. And so me and this guy are not doing great at getting along at this point, because I'm like, you're not paying for this. Like, this is not everything about you. Like, I'm not gonna ship all of my family there for this wedding and pay all this money and everything. Like, we've got to come to some kind of, like, figure this out. And so he just became very quiet about everything. And then he tried to tell my daughter that I was a felon. I'm a nurse. Do you know who checks on me? The FBI, 3-letter agencies. I have to upload my digital handprint into a scanner to do my job. Like, I am excessively checked out to do your job.
Where the fuck did he get that idea from?
So he said he did a search and it came up on this search. And I'm like, yeah, because my ex-husband, the guy that you seem to like, is a felon. And my name is attached to his name unless you pay for the search, like, and then it tells you. And I'm like, that's just not true. And so I had happened to get a new job at the same time. So I sent my full background report to them because I was like, no, this is crazy. So he's like trying to get my daughter to not be on my side. We're having problems, like all this stuff. Then he wants a prenup. Then he wants all of these things. And I'm just like, this is nuts. Like, this guy wants to control everything. And I made the mistake of my life because I told someone that very possibly could have this going on that he was a narcissist. You do not ever tell someone that is narcissistic or has narcissistic tendencies that they're a narcissist, or they will cut you out like 110%. And that's exactly what happened. And so one day she was there, and the next day she was just gone. I was blocked on Facebook. I was blocked on everywhere. I was blocked my phone number, everything except Messenger, which she would only answer like once a week. So I'm getting pretty heated. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is not normal behavior. This is very weird. So I'm kind of lashing out. I'll admit I was a jerk. Like, I was like, this is crazy. This is scary. Ted Bundy vibes. Like, I was really into murder stuff at that time, like listening to your podcast, other people's podcasts. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, red alert, push the button.
Yep, she's about to get coagulated.
I was feeling that way. And as a mom, I know that's sort of irrational, but I was like scared. And I was like, this is no, no. So I reached out to his parent, and that worked at the bank. I knew she worked at the bank. So it's a small town. I found the name, sent the email, like, please help me out. I don't understand what's happening here. He pulled like my credit report. He pulled my background thing. It's not even correct. He's lying. Like, I'm not sure what's happening here, but this is weird. It's just
Well,
weird.
what it sounds like to me, and that I've seen other people go through and kind of mildly experienced myself, is the isolation thing is extremely crucial for a
Yes.
relationship like this to work. They
Yes.
must be isolated.
And the control cannot be on my side. And I was so intertwined with her. Literally, we had a loan together for that trip to go to Italy. And we even said, like, don't worry, even though you got to come too, we'll pay for it because you're a flight attendant and you got us the flights and they were bomb. Like, if you fly like that, you'll never want to fly another way. Like, don't ever do it because it's horrible. You fly another way ever again. But it was great. I will say I got to fly like in the rock star section, and it was fantastic. So I was like, don't worry about it. We're going to get our taxes. It's a short-term loan, blah, blah. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to ask her to marry me when you pay off that loan shark. And I said, oh, so this is a contingent proposal? That's wild. This loan was for like $1,200. This wasn't like $10,000. This was silly, actually. And I was like, okay, it's Christmas. It's literally 2.5 weeks till Christmas. We have 6 kids, plus you, plus my other daughter's boyfriend. Can you kind of chill until we get the taxes done? Please and thank you. Like, that was my
Yeah.
agreement with her. You weren't in existence before then. So that would be great. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, oh, yeah, no problem. Well, it was a problem because the next day, the bank account we shared together, I was locked out of.
Well, how are you going to
So,
pay him back if you're locked out of the account?
well, things started bouncing, and then that was my problem. And I couldn't get in there to even do anything. And so there was all this drama, literal drama. And then the worst part was we had it all zeroed out, and my husband ordered a bunch of Amazon for the kids. And he was so used to using the same bank information. It was already in there. And he ordered like $800 worth of Christmas stuff on the wrong thing because we opened at the same bank. So he just saw that name of the bank. He was like, oh, yep, that's the one, and just messed it all up. So it was completely innocent and we could switch it around. But now we have all these fees and I didn't know because I couldn't see it and I wasn't supposed to look because Christmas and da 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 da. And so it's a whole thing. And I'm just like, this is an accident. Like, this is easily fixed, but you have to let me into the dang bank account. Like, what are you doing? My check is going into there, like literally in 2 days. And all of a sudden, every agreement we'd made, like this has to be done by January, was shoved directly forward. And this is like December 4th. And I'm like, okay. And I said to her, this is really bad timing because this is Christmas. You're being really selfish. And she said, well, I don't have 6 kids and I can be. Never in her life.
Ah.
Yeah. Never spoken to me that way. Never in her life. And so I was becoming pretty short-tempered myself with these kind of retorts. And I'm like, that's fine, but what about your family? Like, what about the kids? What about your siblings? What about like all this stuff going on? And she just didn't care anymore. And it was such a weird change that I was like, what is happening with you? Like, what is going on? So we're strange to this day, and it's been 5 years. Okay. So one year, my husband came home, and you know how it pops up in memories, like, oh, a year ago today you were in blah, and so pops up for my husband, and he's like, you got to come here, and I'm like, what? I'm like busy doing some, I don't know, probably doing the dishes or something. And he's like, you come here, like, stop what you're doing. I'm like, wow, he never acts like this. Like, what is going on? Are you okay? And he's like, look where we were a year ago. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, no, look at the name. And I was like, what? And he's like, Temple de Minerva. Are you serious? Wasn't that what she said when we were on our little trip? And I'm like, oh, yeah, it was. And he's like, don't you think that's kind of weird? And I'm like, well, yeah, and then he's like, well, don't you find that interesting that this all like, so this is back to the temple that we started with there. He's like, don't you think that's strange? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't even know what that means exactly. So I look it up. Well, then I find this, the Great Seal of the state of California, where we were on our little stay, is a picture of Minerva, and she is on the state seal for California. So the most prominent image put on the seal was the Roman goddess of wisdom, Minerva, who is equated with Athena in Greek mythology. So I was like, what? The, like, that's weird because I'm trying to figure out who Minerva is, and this comes up. So I'm like, okay, that's a little strange. But also, there's a story about another person in this whole thing. And in the temple de Minerva, as the story goes, Poseidon, her dude, sees Medusa, who was there to worship her. Okay. And she's just minding her own business. She's worshiping Minerva and like praying to her, and no weird stuff or funny stuff at all. And he sees her, he's overcome with lust, throws her on the ground and rapes her. So the story goes. And we were there right after that happened to my daughter. And so all of this is really strange. And then we find out we're in that temple thing. I'm looking up about California. I'm starting to put weird things together. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then my daughter comes about 6 months later, my other daughter, and she says, did you see her new tattoo? And I said, absolutely not, because I am blocked off the planet. I am in the misfit land of toys. No. And she said, okay, I'm going to send you something. So she sends me this picture of her new tattoo. And it is a picture of Medusa with a cherubim, which you know what cherubim are.
Oh, I know.
And this is what it says. Some people ask why I didn't add more color or a flower or something prettier. Well, the meaning behind my tattoo isn't pretty. Medusa, just like myself and many other women, were raped. Medusa was then cursed. This is how I felt. I felt after being raped, ugly and so low in life. I wanted to represent how I felt in the middle of a curse. Beautiful but full with snakes. And yet I also wanted a sense of strength with her. Following my Medusa, there is a guardian angel, because without my guardian angel, I would not be here today. I remembering wanting to be gone from this curse, but an angel kept me here. This tattoo means so much to me, and I am so blessed to be here today, alive, and to be a survivor. Okay, as if this story isn't weird enough, this is going on. This picture happens, and then I start thinking, like, what was going on in her life before she met him? She lived with a bunch of other flight attendants, one of which happened to be a Creole girl from New Orleans. And her family was really into some weird stuff. And they were messing around with it a couple nights and decided to do a love spell. And she used to do all kinds of weird burnings and strange stuff. And my daughter would complain to me all the time, like how creepy it was. And she's like, I know I shouldn't have done it, but we were drunk and blah, 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 this whole big thing. So this girl was in her life. And then all of a sudden, as soon as the guy comes in, the girl just disappears. And I'm telling you, this girl was close to us and close to our family, like really close. Like, she would call me mom, like she was like on Facebook with all of everything. I would go out and visit them, and she unfriended me. She unfriended my husband. She unfriended all the kids, and she took off, and no one has ever seen her again, ever. As soon as the guy comes into play.
What?
Yeah. So I'm like,
They did a
okay,
love spell for your daughter?
yep. And then she met the guy, and then this girl took off. And I'm like, don't you find it kind of randomly, completely crazy weird that this was almost like an assignment, right? Like, there are people in this world that are meant to take out assignments on other people. And she was saved at the time, but like she hadn't been rebaptized. She got out of the church like I did, but she'd never been rebaptized at this point in her life. She had never worked through all this stuff, like none of this. And so I know for me, when I got out of the LDS church, the attachments that I had on me were like really bad strongholds. Like I could feel it. Like there wasn't anything cursing my daily life, but like random sicknesses, random people dying all the time, all this crazy stuff. And I can't blame it on that, but I'm just saying sometimes you have to evaluate your life when you're a Christian and really use discernment and like go through your home and get rid of cursed objects and just things that make sense. I'm not completely like, ooh, every little thing is bad, but sometimes things are bad and you never know.
Well,
So
let me tell you a story that might bring you some clarity because it's really weird that this whole thing has even been brought up. I did not know it was going to be this.
yes.
For the listeners, I did not know this was part of the story, so what I'm about to say will just blow your mind. I was going through a thing when I first moved to Oklahoma where I was like, I'm not a Christian anymore. There's got to be more to it. I'm going to do crystals. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put like crystals in my asshole and like all these things that you're supposed to do because it's supposed to heal you, right? And bring things into your
Yes.
life. And all you do is end up chasing your tail. There's no healing there. There's nothing. You just keep in this endless thing of trying to become healed and never getting there. So I was working at a place, and my relationship with my mom was exactly how you're describing it. We did everything together. We were almost like attached at the hip, finish each other's sentences, like did everything together. We're best friends, everything. And I started working at a place with this girl, and it was around Christmas time. And she was like, I've searched all over and I couldn't find the perfect Christmas gift for you. So what I did is I made one. And I was like, oh my God, I love homemade gifts. Thank you. And she said, I did a love spell for you. And she gave me a necklace to wear every day, and it had some herbs and some gems, some gemstones or like crystals in it, and it looked almost like a little vial, but
Mm.
you wear it as a necklace, and it had like a little dangling crystal thing on it
I
to make
think
it
I
look
know what you're
pretty.
talking about. Yeah, yeah. I've
Yeah.
seen those.
And so I was like, oh my God, you did a love spell for me. Thank you. Oh, I just, this is so amazing. I love homemade gifts. I wore it every single day for almost a year. But what happened after I started wearing it didn't take a year to happen, but I wore it every day for like a year. Um, a few weeks after I started wearing it like every day, these weird people started coming into my life and introducing me to more weird people. And
Mm-hmm.
through that, I met my ex-husband who was mentally, verbally, physically, in every conceivable way abusive and drew me away from my mom, made me hate my mom. He isolated me from my family. He was a control freak. He wouldn't let me go visit my mom. He wouldn't let me go visit my family. Um, but I was just all so in love with him because I was like, "Oh my God, he loves me so much and he wants to get married and all these things and that's what I've wanted my whole life." And I was just so captivated
That's
by that.
just like her. That's
But
just like
he
her.
pulled me right out of my family. He hated my sister. He hated my mom. He would,
Mm,
if my phone rang and he saw it was my mom calling, he would like send it to voicemail. He
mm,
was such a freak of nature, psychopath. And yes, I did eventually end up getting smart and running away, like in the middle of the night to get away from him and never looked back.
like sleeping
But
with the enemy or something. Yeah.
yes, but I remember thinking back on it when I was going through that weird like crystal phase and all that, that girl had given me that love spell necklace, and it wasn't a few weeks later that I met him. And
Yep.
he ruined my life for a good 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
Ruined my life. And on top of it all, my mom found out she had cancer again.
Mm,
So she already had cancer. She was in remission and she was doing really good. And then she found out she had cancer for the second time while I was with him. And he wouldn't even let me go to her chemos with her or go to the hospital with her or go to doctor's
wow.
appointments with her. And that's what broke me. And I had to run away because I loved my mom so much.
Mm,
There was nothing he could have said or done that was going to keep me away from being with her in her last couple of like months or
right.
whatever. And I did. I ran away in the middle of the night and she passed away like
Mm,
maybe 6 months after I did that. And I had a really good 6 months where I just
oh,
apologized to
good.
her and I said like how sorry I was. But this whole thing with the love spell and it's giving me the chills because you don't know what darkness you're
Well,
opening yourself up to. Like, what kind of love am
hurts like
I?
that. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying like love spell, right? Quote unquote. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the love though? Who's
Yeah.
loving?
Right. Who's the devotion for? And I truly believe that people can have attachments without being possessed. Okay, there are something in the Bible called familiar spirits for a reason. And if you believe in guardian angels, then you have to believe in the other side, because this is why I study the occult, because nothing is clear cut. If it's one way, then it's the other way, because there's always this scale of balance with God, right? And so you have to understand, and I'm not saying, hey, everybody go out and study the occult, like read the books and stuff. You can get the synopsis and like go on podcasts or do whatever. Like, I'm not saying that, because some people mentally would be disturbed by that. Okay, not everybody needs to read what Crowley has done. Like, there's some whacked out crap. But I'm just saying, like, all of this was happening. And then the only other times we met him was he flew in for my son's graduation. You have to understand, we have so many kids and we are such a loud family that we should be Italian. Like, we are crazy people. And so if you're not used to that, it's a lot. You know, if you come from like a reserved family, you're probably not going to like my noisy ass house. Like, it is crazy. And when somebody's doing something exciting and we're like putting together a party and we're running, and my husband's parents are coming, they're super Mormon, and I'm always worried and like all this weird stuff. So like there's dynamics happening, and he always would leave early. He would like say, oh yeah,
Oh
I'm
my
gonna
God, that's
stay.
giving me chills, Heidi.
It gets weird. And I'm telling you, I have this other daughter, and she met him, and he came out on Halloween, and he doesn't celebrate Halloween because he's super too good for that. But I take my kids trick or treating because they're kids and they don't understand anything. And I know there's back and forth on that too, but she's little and I'm just walking around, and then all of a sudden I hear you have to understand, my second daughter, she's a wild one. Okay. She's born at home. She didn't wait for anything. Like she's just double gates when she was little because she'd like bounce over the top. She didn't care. She just dive off the top, swan dive to her death. Like she's just wild. Okay. This kid is like, whoa. But she's grown up now. She's in her 20s too when she meets him. And she meets him and she's like, I hate him. And I'm like, he's a pilot. Like he's nice, super
That's
respectful.
the
Like,
intuition.
and yeah, she's like, Mom, he's Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'm like, you cannot say that. Like, he's right there. Like, I'm like getting really mad at her. And we're walking, and my other daughter's there, and she was like 13. And he goes, Oh, how old are you? And she goes, 13. And he goes, 13 will get you 13 years. And she heard that. And she flipped around and she goes, UMF, blah, blah, beep, beep, beep. Did you just say that to my 13-year-old sister, you Jeffrey Dahmer mother? Like she just went crazy. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, stop. Like I was hideously embarrassed. Like
Mm.
embarrassed. Like I was like, shut up right now. And she would not stop. She was so upset. She hates anything with like pedophilia, which same girl, same. But I was like, maybe he was just kidding, for God's sake, calm down. I was like, just stop. And so we get back to the house. And of course he had to leave like super the next day. Like it was like boom the next day. He was supposed to stay 2 or 3 days and didn't. Oh, my mom needs me, some silly excuse, and then told me, oh, about my plumbing. And he's a plumber and he didn't fix it. And it was just some little tweak that he could have done in 2 seconds. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, that's fine. I think the chain was loose. Like, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, that'll run up your water bill. And I felt like I was getting lectured. And I'm like, okay. Like, I was super nice, but I
It's
was like,
just an
oh,
excuse to not be around the
yeah,
family.
it was weird because the next day I had plans because he's a pilot and we have a big junkyard for like huge Air Force planes. Like it's super cool. And I'm like, oh, I have plans to take you here because you're a pilot and that's super cool. And he's like, sorry, we rented a Jeep and we're going to go somewhere, just me and her. And I'm like, oh, I thought you were here to visit the
Heidi,
family.
that's what they
Yep.
do.
It
They
was so
isolate.
bad. And so I was like, what the heck? So he left, but she stayed, right? And then she had to have a crazy surgery because she needed a surgery in her nose from like an infection got pushed up because of the flying. And so it was actually really severe and it went into her brain and it was kind of scary, but they got it all and everything. And I got her all taken care of and I was like taking care of her. But so she had stayed here, but when she had to go back, it was like a couple weeks later. And I mean, she was like coldish to me the whole time. And then I guess she told my husband on the way to the airport, I'm just scared he's not going to let me come back. He doesn't like me. Remember, they both have free flight benefits. This is a flight attendant and a pilot. And so I'm like, what? He told me when he got home, he goes, my husband's really like calm and like not like me. Like if she said this to me, I would be like loud, but it's not, it's him. And he's like, well, you need to put your foot down. And she's like, he's really pushing a prenup. And then I look and his state is a not a 50-50 state. What he has is his and what she has is hers. And he tried to buy a house before they got married. And I'm like, who even does that? Like, you're not even married yet. You haven't even had a wedding yet. What is happening? So I just said to him, like, very nicely, I said, I think that should be something you guys should do together, because like she has to live there too, you know? And he's like, yeah, well, we'll
And
discuss
you're
it.
also her mother and thinking of her future.
Yeah, I was scared for her because he's making these decisions and he tried to play it off like, oh, it's an investment. But she was crying. You have to understand, I wouldn't have known about these problems had she not be coming to me. And so I was like, whatever, it's fine, like roll with the flow with him. Like, even that, I tried to be really supportive. But then she's like, I want this ring. I want this ring. Like, I need you to tell him I want you to go with him. And she's like pushing me. And I'm like, he doesn't like me. Like, I don't think he's going to like that. And so he made it very clear, like, no, I do not want your help. And then I said, well, this infection that she had, you have to go in and get tested too, because you guys are probably passing this back and forth because it's sinus and it drips in your mouth and whatever. So you should probably get checked, because if she gets it again, he said it's super dangerous for her because she doesn't have an autoimmune system that's good. So he's like, yeah, well, I just want you to know, thanks for the advice, but no thanks. I don't go to doctors. And I was like, but what if she dies? And he was like, I'm just going to tell you one more time, I don't go to doctors.
So,
And
what kind of banking family is he from?
yeah, exactly. I don't know, but I know she's the VP. And she made the letter that I wrote. All it said was like, I'm concerned about all of this stuff. Like, I'm kind of freaking out. And I wished you would let me know what to do, that we can help bring them together as a loving couple. Help me out. Like, it wasn't like, I think your son's crappy and blah. It was none of that. So then she called me finally right before Christmas and said, we're not coming anymore. I can't believe you wrote a letter that was so hateful. And I was like, wait, what? Then she says it went to the whole bank. Okay, hold on. Even my 11-year-old son at that time, well, he was 10, he said, Mom, that doesn't make any sense because it was her name, last name, dot, first name at bank.com. You know, that's a person that goes to one human being. And he's like, "But people send her taxes and stuff." Like, even my son was like, BS. Like, it has to be a secure email because people send them like important things like
She's just
financials.
saying that because he's being a dick.
Hmm. And so this gets crazier. I know this is already crazy. So she gets pregnant. They get married. I got a letter stating that I cannot come, but my ex-husband, who's had multiple issues, is bipolar, sometimes takes his meds. No judgment if you have bipolar or any other mental illness. He just doesn't like to take his meds and constantly is having issues from that, from like trying to not be here in this world anymore and certain things, because he gets really manic or really depressive and he has a really hard time. He has really bad borderline. And so he has to stay on his meds. He's a great guy when he does. He really is. But he's had some substance abuse issues. It's a lot of things. And so he meets that side of the family. Now, mind you, this is in Iowa. My ex-husband moved back to Iowa when my kids were 4 and 9 and just never paid child support, never did anything for them, like hardly ever spoke to them, just gone, getting arrested, doing all kinds of wild stuff. I couldn't even find him to divorce him for 2 years. And so this was the guy that left me for the polygamist girl. And so that was happening. And I just was like, listen, my dad was like in a lot of trouble when I was young, but he went to prison and everything, but like I missed my dad. I love my dad. Like, and that damaged me. So I don't want to do that to these kids. Like, I'll send them to your parents. I'm not going to send them to you because you've got some issues going on. Then you can see them. They're good people. I know they'll take care of them. You know, his parents didn't do anything wrong. But also, this is like many states away. I was in Utah. This is Iowa, like sending your most prized possessions in the whole wide world. And it's such an unknowing situation and you're just scared. And so I would do that and drive halfway and all the things to endorse this relationship safely. And to this day, he still says I was terrible. I was trying to extort him. I'm like, I didn't even care because right, this was not my problem anymore. And they were trying to do some bad things to him. I'm not denying that because they went after him. And twice I signed off multiple thousands of dollars so that he could not go to jail. Long story short, they really like that family. And I was shook because I'm like, they're not really that Christian. They drink all the time. Like, I was kind of like, really? And her dad has not got it together. Like, I was like, oh, that's weird. Okay. But he gets to go to the wedding and all of them get to go to the wedding. And he's got all these issues. And this is why I bring it up. They sent me a letter saying, because I have PTSD, I can't come because I can't be trusted to be a normal human, even though he's had all these problems. No judgment to him. I'm just saying, like, I don't understand when you're comparing apples to apples here. I was like, okay. And literally sent me an invitation, like, do not show up. You will be
So
removed.
letting him take complete control over her life.
Yes. And then he moves her to a farmette in the middle of nowhere, 7 miles to the nearest neighbor, unless it's a cow. And I am freaking out at this point because remember, I'm blocked on life. I'm begging for any chance through everybody, through my mom, through anybody. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Like I I will do whatever you want. And this is where I got really close to God. Like cuz I didn't want to be here anymore. Like it's not the fact that you have other kids, but she was so close with me that it just was so much. And so I really delved into God and I was like, okay, God, you got to help me here because this is above my pay grade. Like when you say you really give something to God, like I had to do that. And he did help me and I started developing my testimony and finding out all these things and learning about all this weird stuff in the process. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I wake up because 2020 happens and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is a scam and it takes one thing to like spiral you down the rabbit hole. And that's what happened. So I'm like finding more things out and I'm just really into God and love and journaling. And I'm not perfect by any means, but I'm just saying like I was trying to develop my life. And so in the midst of all of this, I find out she got pregnant. And that was really hard because I thought, well, maybe, maybe now since she's going to have a baby, this will be the time she needs me or whatever. And then my mom came and said, yeah, she needs you. You should call her. She says she'll do it if you just say sorry to everybody. And I was willing to do it, dude. I don't even care. Like, I was like, fine. So I try and it wasn't good enough. The sorry was wrong. I don't know. It wasn't sorry enough. It had too much about how I felt. Yeah, I can't have feelings. It has to be about them. So I'm like, this is just so messed up. And so she still says no. She still says she doesn't want anything to do with me. And then she has the baby and it didn't go like she wanted. She had a C-section, the baby was breech, all this stuff. So they get home and we're sitting at the table and we're all just sitting there. And I said, this needs to stop now. That was as loud as it got. But my whole family's there, like my other kids, my mom, my husband, everybody's there. And the phone rings, like literally as I hit the table, the phone rings. My mom picks it up and it's my daughter and she's screaming. And all I can think of as a nurse is something has gone wrong with her medically because she just had this baby. I'm like terrified. So I'm freaking out and my mom doesn't do good with stuff like this. She just hands me the phone and I'm like, what do I even do? Like she said she doesn't want to talk to me. Like so I'm just like, I hope you're okay, and she's like, yeah, and she acted like I talked to her yesterday. Like this was so weird. And I hurried and got in the couple sentences I could. I said, I hope you're okay. I hope the baby's okay. She's beautiful. I'm so excited for you. But she said, Mom, my house got struck by lightning. By lightning. And I
What?
said, what? I said, what? And she goes, it hit a gas line and blew my wall out and it malfunctioned everything. And like, he's a volunteer firefighter too. So he ran back in to save the day and he put it out. Of course he did. And everything was fine, but it literally burned up like one whole wall in their house. Like it was really scary. And then she got really quiet. Like at first she was like, I love you guys. It was weird. It was like, we were like, we love you, love you. Everybody was fine. And then it got weird. And then she's like, okay, I got to go. So she hangs up and I'm like, well, and I got to at least say, moms don't quit. Like, I'm not happy with what you've chosen to do here. This has really messed up my other kids. Like, I didn't say that part, but this has caused severe damage to my children. I just said, moms don't quit. The door is open. Like, where your home is. Like, you can always be home. You're always welcome home. And she's like, oh, yeah. And then that was all. And the next day, he called my mom and he ripped her a new one. This 65-year-old, very fragile emotionally person. And everybody knows that my mom gets like really worked up fast and she has like heart issues and stuff. And I was like, what? And I was like, he called her and did that. And then he's like, if you ever do that again, you'll be out too. And it's me. You're right. I hate women like her. And if I have anything to do with it, she'll never see her again. And I'm like, women like me. Okay. Loud people, people that know how to stand up for themselves. Is that what you mean? Like, I don't know what that means, but
But
yeah,
she called you.
she called my mom and happened to be there.
But your mom didn't do anything.
She let me talk on the phone. She let me have the phone. And so they monitor everything. Like when my mom got a new phone line, because she's getting older, underneath our phone plan, it still shows up under my husband's name. And when that happened, even though this was just like 8 months ago, they locked down everything under my husband too, like kicked him off all socials, everything, because they thought somehow, I guess, he's spying on them or something. And all it was my mom with this new phone number. And so they are so weird about us. But like for that to happen, for lightning, and then the next time we had another talk about this, a tornado hit in their town. And my husband's like, maybe you just shouldn't talk about this anymore. He's like, just don't talk about this anymore with them at all. But it was so weird because the baby was born. And the funny thing is that baby looks just like me when I was little, like just like me. And I
Well,
always
don't
say
tell
is,
them that.
yeah, it's God's little trick on them. I guess my daughter did, the loud one. She said, the baby looks like the other sister, or the littlest one I have. And she goes, and you know who she looks like, right? She looks just like mom. So, I mean, they know, but what I'm saying is, don't you think it's funny that he would yell and be so he told her I was demon possessed, that I was demonic, all these crazy things that I'm like, no, that would be you. Like, I mean, not literally, but I'm just saying, like, you're the one screaming at an old lady, not me. Like,
Do
what?
you think this is like the perfect storm of the trauma that happened to her,
I
the
think,
love spell, all this stuff, and then this demon appears in her
mhm.
life, and like it was like the perfect storm.
I think when you open yourself up for things and you mess with things that you shouldn't mess with, that a lot of times things can come in, right? Because think back, like in the temple, she was still really upset when she was in that temple with us in Rome, and she was still really hurting and still having that trauma. And then of course that like was relative to that area and that actual story, if it's true. And then something obviously happened, and for her to say Minerva, no, that's not her saying like she's Minerva. That's saying something's coming at her. And that's exactly what happened with Medusa. That's exactly what happened is Minerva didn't lash out at her dude. No, she lashed out at Medusa and gave her a head full of snakes. That's why she had that. And so it's interesting to me that all of that is similar in a way. And I mean, and then the cherubim on top of it. And I mean, I don't think my daughter doesn't know any of this. My daughter doesn't know about the Minerva thing. She doesn't know about the state seals. She doesn't know about the temple. She doesn't know any of this. And at the same time, all of that happened to us. The weird thing was my loud daughter was home. She couldn't go because she had to work on that trip in California. And she said, when we got back, she goes, I had the scariest dream and I was in sleep paralysis at the same time. And she called my mom for help, like when she woke up, because she was hysterical. And she was like, I was like that for like 35 minutes or something. And that was when we were all running around. It was like the same time. And she had tried to call me, but we were running around trying to find Bigfoot jumping in the house. I don't know what it was, like a bear or something. And I was like, that's weird, like it was the same time frame. And she's like, isn't that weird that that was the same time frame? And I'm like, yeah, this whole thing is weird. Like when she used to hang out with those girls, especially the one, she would talk her into doing things that I'm like, this is a bad idea. This is not, no, this is not uh like like they went to the Dominican and ended up partying in some mansion with like some drug lord that had AK-47s all over, like super scary stuff. And I'm like, why would you go there? Like, as a mom, I am like mad at her. I was like, what is wrong with you? You don't go to people's places. Like, what if you never came home? You know, you don't do that. You guys are beautiful and young. Like, why would you do that? And so,
It was because of the rape.
yeah, yep. And I'm just
Do you
like,
think
that
that's
opened her up.
why? And I've said this before, but the reason that they, like, in dark occult rituals, they have to torture you in these ways because it does open your soul up like that. And they do have to rape the children and they do have to do these torturous things to you because you never fully really heal from that. I mean, you can cry out
Yes.
to Jesus and you will receive healing, but it never leaves your mind and it does. And then on top of that, she's dabbling kind of in these occult dark arts like, oh, we're gonna do a love spell. Oh, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
go and go to a drug lord's house and party. What? And then you're bringing, not that it's your fault or anything, but she goes into this very ancient sacred temple while you're on your trip and she's like a open vessel
Mm-hmm.
at that point,
Yes.
and anything could have jumped in. And the reason I think that it's significant is because of her crying out in the middle of the night like that, but then to turn around and get this tattoo and she has no, absolutely zero information about what we know,
Mm-mm.
and for
None.
her to pick this symbolism and to put it on herself permanently, it's almost like she's yoking to that spirit.
Well, because too, she said, following my Medusa, there is a guardian angel. Without my guardian angel, I would not be here today. And then she even calls it a curse, wanting to be gone from this curse, but an angel kept me here. So I'm like, that is so freaky when you learn about things. And I do want to put this in here as like a little postscript for people is once she got with the husband, she did get baptized into a regular like Baptist church or something, which I'm grateful for. She seems to be doing well, other than she doesn't care about any of us, and has her life and her family and whatever she's doing there. But she does bring that up, and that's so strange to me again about this, about being full with snakes. Like, that's just such a weird thing to say. And how big the tattoo is, people, like, this is her full arm. This is like a full arm cover, like the whole thing. And it just seemed
It's like a
really
half sleeve
mm-hmm. Yep. And
of the Medusa and then the cherubim under it. You know, Heidi, and I know it's your daughter, but saying she was full of snakes and cursed, I mean, I get it. This was a Facebook post to like explain why she got the tattoo, but a lot of people just get tattoos and they never, like, if somebody
right.
asked, you'd be like, "Oh, well, it means something to me, you know?" And but
Mm-hmm.
she wrote this whole, almost like she was purging it out of
Mm-hmm.
herself. You know, I
Yep.
need to write this. I need to say why I feel connected to Medusa, why, like, I was raped, I feel cursed, I'm full of snakes. I'm very happy that she got baptized, but I mean, I think while she was in this cursed, full of snakes time in her life, she got herself another attachment,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
know? And
Yep.
I think that he's probably full of snakes and like she, I don't know, that, you know what they always say, like, you yoke to whatever, you have to be equally yoked. So if she
Mm-hmm.
is cursed with this Minerva attachment and she's full of snakes, what do you think she's yoking towards?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who might be cursed and full of snakes? I mean, I don't know.
Right. Yeah,
It
and
just, it seems like
he's
that.
like the most unkind person, because like even when I explained to him like he was so absurdly upset that we took this $1,200 loan. And I said, we're just getting our taxes soon. Like, it's really not that big a deal. And he's like, yeah, but the interest rate and this and that and blah, 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 like a lecture. And I was like, yeah, but I don't care because it's short term. So I didn't care at the time. Like, I just wanted to go and it's short term. I'm never going to pay that interest rate. And it was like he was lecturing me. And I said, well, I've had a really rough life. I've had cancer. I've been divorced. Like, me and Casey had all these problems with our exes and tons of court and costs, and my brother died and all this stuff. And I said, we just wanted to live in the time frame because you never are guaranteed tomorrow. And I said, but we didn't expect to have problems like me not being able to fully go back to work after I got sick and blah blah blah. So this is why I had these problems on my credit report. Why I have to explain it to him, I don't know. But they were old. They were super old, like it's all been repaired. And he goes, huh, well, that's nice. That'll never happen to me. I'll never have to
Heidi,
worry about that.
why you had to go through the effort of divulging your most private details to this perfect stranger is again, I mean, do you think that she still you know, she might have several attachments.
Hmm. I
I mean,
worry. I worry that it's almost, honestly, Julia, it's like MK Ultra. It's like she believes something about me that isn't true. Was I
well, she's
perfect?
been
No.
Stockholmed.
Yeah, it was like she'll tell my other kids like, "Oh, well, she yelled at us, so she abused us and this and that." And I'm like, you were given so much. I mean, you were doted on and loved hysterically because I had a hard time getting pregnant, which I told you about. So I'm like, no, like your 16th birthday was like a wedding, like DJ, full, like just everything, anything I could do, like prom dresses were $400, like this or that. I just would give her anything. And I mean, that's what my second daughter said. She said, yeah, that's probably the problem, is you would do that with her. And then she just didn't
No,
see.
that's not the problem. Honestly, Heidi, it's not the problem because I know a lot of people in my family whose mothers doted on them in that exact same way and they didn't grow up and do this. I think whatever, there are pop culture references about pilots for this very reason. That's why the perverted, crazy freaking guy in Family Guy, Quagmire, is a pilot and he's like the most perverted, sick dude you've ever met. Like what she went through caused this. Nothing about you and 100% about that ordeal that she went through. I honestly can't even imagine going through something like that and then living to tell the tale and just moving on with life like you're fine. It just will
Mhm.
never be the same again.
Right.
Um, and
And
all
the
she
law let her down. Like, we tried to sue and like all this stuff, and like they won't even run the kit because it was interstate. It was like a big mess. And so she felt really jilted. She really did. But like, how
well,
they say you
Heidi,
lash out on the person that does like the most for you. Like, I was always like, even with the lawyers, even with this, even with that, like I always did all the things because I'm like the fixer. And then I'm not saying I never yelled at her. I certainly did. I shouldn't have yelled at my kids nearly as much as I did. But like, I mean, to be
I hate for
judged.
you to say that though. Every time you say like, "Oh, I yelled at him and I shouldn't have yelled at him." Dude, Heidi, it has 0% anything to do with you and 100% what happened to her. What was it, like a hotel room or something?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Heidi, there are things in this world that we will never understand, but when you take someone's ability for their own organs and you hold them down and you do those things to them, you're never the same again. And that's what bothers me so much. And I don't want to get on a soapbox, but I was talking to one of my friends the other day that people throw that word around a lot. I was raped. I was raped in that the Me Too movement or whatever. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I was raped. I was raped. Were you raped? Were you actually
Chapstick.
raped? Because I know someone who goes around saying that they were raped, and I don't even know if they comprehend what it is because you being 16 and having sex with your 18-year-old boyfriend and running off all the time is not you being raped. I know
No.
legally he was 18 and you were 16 and like that's not supposed to go down, but you were freaking dating him for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Like that's not raped.
No. It
Okay?
was it was like it was so brutal. She lost full control of her bathroom function for 6 weeks.
Think about that. And then you have people walking around like, "Oh, I was raped. I was raped." No, you don't understand. When you've actually went through something like that, your mind doesn't work right anymore. You don't love yourself anymore. You feel disgusted with your own body. You feel disgusted with your entire being. Like, I don't even want to be like she's saying she feels like she was full of snakes.
Yeah.
That kind of trauma opens you up to stuff like that. Now, when she went on this tour, into this ancient sacred freaking temple place, they probably it was like fresh meat in the ocean and the sharks just kind of circled her. You know
Well,
what I
and the
mean?
fact that he was, and I'm not, if he sees this, like whatever, I'm not blaming you, but you always go back and wonder, you know how I said people are assignments? Like, why did this famous person come up to us? And you know that the occult goes so deep into famous people. Like, we were picked out of hundreds of people at this fountain. Like, there was so many people there. Like, he could have asked anyone, but no, it was like almost specific. And I'm like, maybe he just had that feeling to ask us because he was following something weird. Not, not saying pick that person, but that feeling that you get to like, oh,
Even if we
maybe.
don't make any assumptions about the tour guide, I will tell you this, if he's hanging around with the Kardashians and shit, and he's
Yep.
this jacked,
Yep.
buff, super handsome dude,
Yeah.
seemingly probably has some connections, okay?
Hmm.
It's like I said, if he's into some dark stuff, of course, it was like he was gravitating towards your daughter. It was like, ooh, okay, I feel
Yep.
like I should ask them to go on this tour. He might have not even realized why.
Right, right. He
You
might
know
have
what I
just the
mean?
same promptings we get from Jesus. If they're not with Jesus and they're with the other side, then they probably get those same promptings too. Like how you're like, oh, I should go talk to this person and smile at them today. They probably get the same thing, but different. Like, I definitely believe in that. And I definitely believe, like, with all my heart, that this is too many coincidences. Like, I, this is too many coincidences. Like it's crazy. And the fact that even my husband's like, I am not like you. I'm not woo woo. I'm not all about fallen angels and weird stuff. Like he's really not. And he's like, but that story is so weird. He's like, it's just weird.
The timing of everything.
Hmm.
6 months after this horrific rape occurs,
Yep.
she's still healing. Meets this guy doing love spells and stuff with this Creole girl. And
Hmm.
again, I always say this because I do realize maybe there is a portion of my listeners who don't identify themselves to be Christian. But when you dabble in certain dark arts like that, you should not be trying to exert your will over another human being. Love spells are exerting your will over another human being to
Yes.
have some kind of emotion towards you.
Hmm.
Like I know,
Yep.
oh, it's just a love spell. No, you're trying to draw someone in to like love you because you can't love yourself and you feel empty because you
Yep.
don't have you need to cry out to Jesus because Jesus loves you.
Yes.
But they're like,
Yep.
"No, I need a man. I'm going to do this love spell and bring a man in to love me."
Hmm.
Well, no, what you really need to do is retrain your mind how to love yourself and love your family again before you rush in. She's putting all of her value and self-worth on this other human being because she is ill-equipped to do it. I hope her daughter fills some type of void in her though, because children love unconditionally. And I hope that even her daughter's longing to be a part of your family draws her back in, because children are closer to God than anything on this earth. So I hope that God works through her daughter to bring her back to your family. She's still little, so that remains to be seen, but I do think that there are things that can happen to people that open them up to go down these crazy, and it's never the children's fault, right?
No, no,
Like she
no.
got with
And
this
she,
crazy psychopath, but she had a blessing of having
yes,
this baby.
yep.
But this could be part of her testimony one day.
Hmm.
Does
And
she even
it's so
realize any
hard.
of this, like with the attachments and stuff?
She knows nothing about any of what I've put together or shown you or anything, because my one daughter doesn't want to discuss it with her because she's like, that's crazy. And she's going to get upset. Not crazy that she doesn't believe it, but crazy that she's like, if I say that, I'm going to be cut off, you know?
If she says it, if anybody says it to her, they're going to be cut off.
Yep. And so
She
everybody's
cried out
walking
this
scared.
entity's name, though.
Yeah. Yep. With kids. And it wasn't me even that heard it. That's the thing. It's not like I'm making this up because I didn't see it or hear it. The kids did. They thought it was funny, and they certainly don't know who Minerva is at, like, they were like 9 and 11 or 10 and 8. I can't remember, but they were that age for sure. And so I'm sure they don't know Greek gods and whatever at that time. Like, I'm sure they just thought it was
No,
a
they thought
funny,
it was hilarious when she did
yeah.
it.
Yeah, they thought it was a funny name because it is kind of in a weird way, but like also she didn't cry out Medusa. It's not like she was crying out like something was attacking her because she was scared, they said, and then she laid right back down. But I was like, that's weird. Like the cry out wasn't just like a happy cry out. It was like a scared cry out. And so I was like, well, is she
Heidi.
okay? Yeah. And they're like, oh, she went back to sleep. So then I didn't think anything of it because I was like a baby Christian at this point, basically. I mean,
Mhm.
I had
I
just
mean,
gotten
I
out.
think that she's gotten herself down into a deep, dark rabbit hole, and it's the hardest when it's your own family that you love so much.
Yeah. Yep. This is a hard story. And estrangement happens. And even that doesn't get spoken about hardly ever, because I'll tell you, as a parent that goes through it, I try never to lie. It is the hardest lie when people say, how many kids do you have? How many kids do I have? Like, how do you explain that? Like, because it inevitably leads into, oh, you're a grandma. Well, sort of. I'm a grandma to an AI photograph. Like, sure. Like, you get in these conversations with people, and I try to just be really honest, but like a lot of people that I've spoke out and have heard me online are like, you know what? Nobody talks about this. And this is happening more and more, that kids are being pulled apart from their parents in therapy, which she did see a therapist. So I'm always like, well, maybe this happened, after she saw the one therapist after the rape, they were like, oh, they're the best. They're your support. Da, 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 da. We were really involved. And then the next one with the guy, it was a pastor friend of his. And now we're the worst people and we're the bad people and this and that. So I'm like, okay. And I even asked her one time before we weren't speaking, I said, how come I was the best when it was with the licensed therapist and the worst with the pastor therapist? I said, I think something's going on there. And she's like, oh, I forgive you. But, she tells my mom that all the time. Oh, I forgive her, but I just don't want anything to do with her at all. And I never want my baby to meet her because I don't trust her. And I'm like, okay. Like, I've only raised a whole bunch of kids, and nobody's perfect, and I'm sure they're going to fall short too. Like, none of us parent perfectly, not a one. But she brings that up all the time, how, oh, I yelled or I wasn't there. I'm like, dude, your dad wouldn't keep a job. I was going to school full time, working full time, raising a whole bunch of kids, some of which he brought a child from another relationship. I was 17, and I became a mom at 18 because the real mom had a stroke, and we ended up with his daughter, and I didn't know how to be a mom. I was just out of high school. Like, are you serious? She was like 6 years old. Like, and she's sad and like all these things because I'm like, oh my gosh, her poor mom. But like also she lives really far away and we were like the only ones that could take her. So this is full ordeal. And the mom's stroke was so severe, she had to like learn to walk again and everything. Anyways, we had custody of her until forever, till we got divorced. He took her then. She was 13, but I had my cousins, I had school, I worked full time. I was the only one that was stable. And then on top of it, like finally get my nursing, and it was always 100 things. Like I got sick, I had cancer, like none of this stuff I can help. Like, I'm sorry that you had to help raise your brothers and sisters. I am, but I was trying not to die.
Heidi, but I don't want this to become kind of like an attachment for you,
Right.
because I
Right.
I feel like you're going through your mind like, oh, I could have did this better, or I could have done that better, or I was trying not to die and she had to help raise her brothers and sisters, or I was super young, or her dad was crazy, or I don't want like a third party demon to attach to you, because all this like guilt and shame and doubtful things, they don't come from God. And
Right.
as a parent, I know this because my mom used to say this to me. As a parent, you don't owe them anything. Like, you are here to give them birth, make sure they have food and clothes and water, and to love them and teach them about God and hope that they turn out to be a great human being. But you're not here to be their one source of happiness and fulfillment and all of those things. You are a provider and a mother. You teach them life skills, you provide for them, and then you send them out into the world. It sounds like you've went over and beyond for her most of her life, most of it, maybe not the entirety of it, but you're feeling like so guilty and like, oh my gosh, this and that, or what possible thing could I have done to make her hate me like this? And you're letting it affect you now in your life with your children that want to be around you.
Right.
She has a demon that she has got to break the bondage with. You can't do it for her, but what you can do is not become in bondage to the same demon.
Right. Right. No, it is
Don't
hard.
do that. Don't
It
do that, Heidi. Please don't.
it's a constant. I will tell you, like, the only thing that saved me from this whole thing is that I got really close to God during that time, and was able to like just continuously, not just then but now, like work on that over and over and over. But there is nothing that you can erase as a parent to not go like, I mean, like they hate you, you know? And so you're like, oh my gosh, like, and literally you would die for them. And so you're like, I just don't understand, you know? And it
Well,
does get
isn't this
weird.
the whole story about God providing us his only son, who he crucified on a cross and watched him die?
Yeah.
So because he loved us so much, and how many people rebuke God and say that there is no God, and they turn their backs to him and they don't believe in Jesus, they don't want to be saved, they think it's all retarded. And like
Yeah.
how God feels knowing what sacrifice he made because he loves us so much, and there people still turn away from him. It's that same concept. It's free will. You have to understand, through free will, she does not have to love you, and she has to make her own decisions, but you can pray
Yeah.
and pray that she breaks the bondage, and you break the bondage, because you don't want to be in bondage to her. And
Mm-mm.
you don't want to be in bondage to whatever is guiding her right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely don't. And I hope and always pray for like, strength and protection and everything for everyone and reunification if that's his will. But I also understand like it may not be, you know.
It
And
may not be.
at the end of the day, the one thing I always like I guess harbor in my heart is like, God gave her to me. And when this is all said and done and we're not in this life anymore, I will see her again.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't take that no matter what he does.
This man that she has decided to procreate with and marry and be with, I think is just another, it's like she needs a savior, and he was the first
Yes.
one to come along and promise these things to her, and he is this pseudo savior for her. And a lot of people have a savior complex. They want somebody to save them. Save me, save me, save me. And I
Hmm.
had it because my dad was such a piece of shit fuck. And
Same
I was
with her.
wanting so badly to be married and like have all those things because that means somebody loves me, right? But I had to learn that I was just trading one thing for another thing because I wanted somebody to save me, and then somebody saved me, quote unquote, and then I needed somebody else to save me because of him.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it's
That's
just,
true.
you can't let this consume you, Heidi, because
Yeah.
you have other babies that need you,
Hmm.
and they may not understand until they're older and they have kids of their own what this has done to you. But what
Hmm.
you can do is just break that bondage to that guiltful, shameful, weird, burdening spirit that's
Yeah,
attached to this situation.
for sure. I think as a parent, you always have so much guilt, and this is just like amplified it, and it's one of those things I work on a lot because it's shame and self desiccation is like one of the few things you can have as a sin that people will look at as kind of like, oh, that's good. And because people are like, oh, look, she feels bad about that, like that's a good thing, and really, like you said, it doesn't come from anywhere helpful or good. It's good to have enough shame to not walk out into the streets butt naked. We have to have enough sort of shame
Well, you have to be
yeah.
humble, and you have to have some kind of humility, but those things come from God. And a
Right.
lot of the times when I'm feeling like really bad about myself, like I don't even want to be interacting with people and I just get myself like in a really dark, depressed state, I do realize that that feeling does not come from God.
Right.
And, when my mom died, I always tell this to people, and it's the craziest thing. I thought, before my mom died, I thought that I was going to run away and no, my family was never going to see me again because I couldn't live without her and I didn't want to be around them and I just wanted to run off somewhere and die. But when she actually passed, I had such peace after she passed, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know where it came from, and I'll never forget that feeling. And that kind of peace only can come from God.
Right.
And so when I get myself into these really low places, I have to remind myself that this feeling does not come from God. So where is it coming from? It's okay to be sad, it's okay to be this, but
Right.
when you're thinking like I want to unalive myself because I can't
Right.
deal with this. I want to like bury my head in the sand or run away or whatever. Like there is, you can run and run and run and run, but you'll never find what you're looking for because the peace that you need comes from God.
Yes.
So that's
Yep.
what I'm telling you, girl. You got to unburden yourself, break that bondage, and just pray for the peace of the Prince of Peace can
Yes.
only give to you.
Yes, it's changed this last year after, multiple times trying. And my mom even said recently, oh, she said, if you just say sorry and nothing else, because she always brings up, my mom says, how do you forgive your dad who bounced out and did all this stuff and has all these problems, but not her? And so she said, well, because he said sorry. And she's like, but she said sorry. And she said, well, but she wanted to say her piece too, and da da da. And so I just need sorry and nothing else, and just that, and that's all. And so she said, if you'll do that, then it might be better. But I said, you know what, mom? I finally just let it go this year. And I said, I have said sorry enough. If it wasn't good enough, then it wasn't good enough. But she knows where I stand. If she came home tomorrow, it would just be like the prodigal son. Like there would not be arrows thrown at her. I would welcome her with open arms. Like it isn't like that. And so, I finally did tell my mom though, and this is the first year that I've been able to say like I wouldn't do anything to have it fixed. Like God will do what he's going to do, because
What you
we
really
have
should
very,
pray, and I just got this feeling, I don't know why, but it just came across my mind. I haven't said this word in a long time, but you need to pray for deliverance for her
yeah,
because she needs it.
yeah.
You need to pray because whatever spirit is on him, she is yoking with him.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever
Yeah.
spirit is on him is on her too. And you just need to pray for deliverance for her in whatever way that looks like. If they have to get divorced, if she has to find out he's been cheating on her this whole time. Something whatever it is,
Right.
whatever it looks like in God's perfect timing in his will, pray for deliverance for her because it sounds like making someone apologize and then like not they're not apologizing right for you or enough for you, and like that's so manipulative and so narcissistic, and it's evil.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yeah.
begging her
Yeah. This year
for
was
her
the
love.
first year. This year was the first year I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it again, because it hurts me so much and opens up, it like reopens that weird thing that you're saying, like that whole mess. And I just finally said, no, I'm not going to
Mhm.
do that this time. And I had one really bad day, but not a month, you know? And so it has changed a lot for me, because I think because I do my podcast and I try to help other people, and then I try to help people at work, and that fulfillment of trying to give of yourself to others, like I think that helps you, like in some weird way.
And
Like,
forgiving her
yeah, yeah. And I'm not
helps
mad
you.
or like anything. I just miss her. It's like a weird hole in your heart. And like I told my mom, it's really hard with estrangement, and estranged people will get this, whether it's the parent or the child or whoever. When it's a death, when my brother died, it's final. There's nothing you can do about it. He's just gone. He was super young. It sucked, like whatever, but like he's gone, and God has him, and there's nothing we can do for him further, and that's just it. And my mom said, but for you, you wake up and have to deal with this all the time, and I worry for you because that is hard. And I said, no, it is hard, but if I didn't ever speak about it, if I didn't ever share my story, even without the weird stuff, like if I just shared the estrangement part, whatever, it helps somebody out there. Somebody out there is going to hear this and identify with it. And honestly, the only thing that helped me were Derek Prince sermons, John Ramirez sermons, reading the Bible every single day, my dog, and journaling. I love my whole family, and it doesn't mean that they don't love me, but I knew, like you said, nobody could save me, right? I had to like focus it, and it was hard because I wanted to be
And also
saved.
your daughter can't save you.
No, nobody could.
Well, even if she turned up tomorrow and she got delivered from whatever this weird situation is that she's in, it's still not going to save you
Mm-mm.
because you can't, like, as much as you love her, you can't surrender all your power to her. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
complete control over how I feel, my life, how happy I am, everything. You can't surrender that to her. Like
Right. And
she can't
I did
save
for the
you.
first year. The
I know
first
you
year,
did. It sounds like you
the first
definitely
year,
did.
I would have done anything. But then the second year, when I really got into the Bible, I realized something. I realized that I made her an idol. And that is so dangerous. Like, no matter if it's a statue like Minerva or a temple of Minerva or your kid, I made her my idol. And I knew that like halfway through my studies, like I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy bananas. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And then as you learn, like you have to unlearn. And it did take so much time, because everybody thinks like what you just said, like if she came back tomorrow, it would all be fine. But I know it would never be. It would never be the same. It will be fine as far as like we'll be like kosher to each other, like all the things, but like this whole thing has changed not just me, my entire family. It's changed everyone, not just me. They suffer too. Like, I mean, my son has abandonment issues and my husband feels bad and all these things. But like no one can fix that but them. And I can only fix me, you know. And
Mhm.
the dog is just great because he loves me no matter what a mess I am. He just thinks I'm great. So, and you know, people have gone to bat to her for me. Like multiple people that knew how close we were stepped in and sent her messages unsolicited by me because I did not know that. And like, how, you know, you need to think about this. You only get one mom, blah, blah, blah. Nothing matters. Not even when I got sick last year and almost died. You know what she said?
Heidi.
Osteomyelitis in the hospital, damn near to death, going in for emergency surgery. And my other daughter called and said, I think you better come. We don't know if mom's going to be okay. And she said, she'll be fine.
Heidi, you need to pray for deliverance for her.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And it makes me feel bad because you never want to think like that about your kid. But like at the same time, I know enough to know. Like if you watch Derek Prince at all, guys, like I highly recommend him. He can be legalistic, but the stuff that we're talking about, this deliverance part, or John Ramirez, there is something. And I've interviewed like near death experience people. My mom's had one. Like I've talked to people. Like there is something that can affect people through things. Like I 110% know that. And you never want to think like, oh, that's affecting them or whatever because you love them. But at the same time, Jesus came here and that's what half the Bible's about is him walking around delivering people.
My God, Heidi, he's casting demons out left and right.
Yes.
And actually, someone asked me, oh, I remember, it was the guys from the Cult of Conspiracy. He asked me a very interesting question, and I'm gonna just repeat my answer to you because I feel like maybe they didn't appreciate it, but you would. He was like, "Okay, you are always talking about," and I love these two guys, by the
Oh,
way.
I love, yeah, they're so
Yeah,
funny.
they might not see exactly things as I do, but that's great because it leaves room for interpretation and learning, and you just fill in the blank. But he was like, "You're always talking about demons this and demons that, but how come they don't talk about?" uh, the giants in the New Testament as much as they talk about it in the Old Testament. And if there are still giants, why don't we see them in the world now? And I said, okay, first off, there is the flood story through all cultures, throughout all of the world about the flood story. So I do think that maybe pockets of them survived the flood or there was a second incursion, but it does say in the Bible that he sent those spirits of the fallen ones into like this purgatory type place where they
Mhm.
can never rest and always looking for a body to possess. And that's why you see this weird shift from the Old Testament to the New Testament, where it was like a lot of giants and crazy stuff and fallen ones, and this is this in the Old Testament, and then you get to the New Testament, and Jesus is having to cast out demons from everybody. And it's
Mhm.
because those spirits of the fallen angels can't interact with us in the physical world anymore because their bodies were destroyed, but they're constantly looking for a host.
Mhm.
So that's demonic possession. And you do see that in the New Testament. You're always seeing Jesus casting demons out of people
Yes.
in
Yep.
deliverance. And it's because in this fallen world, you can do things to open up doors, or things can be done to you that open
Mhm.
up doors. And these spirits can either attach to you or inhabit your body, and that's why I try not to do those things. I do like to like go to haunted houses or whatever, but even afterwards, I get my family together and we all pray like, you do not have permission to go with me. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Like, you do those things so these problems don't happen. But how many times has someone walked into a place like you did on a tour, just not thinking anything of it, like, oh, this used to be a temple, or oh, this used to be whatever, and you're just waltzing right in there. And I
Mhm.
believe it so strongly. Like, if you're gonna go into those weird places like that, you almost have to put that spiritual hedge of protection up because God only knows what's waiting for you in those
Right.
places.
Yeah, I mean, we've been to many, and I'll tell you the feeling and some of those old, like I've been to Notre Dame before it burned down and some weird stuff with her. And I'll tell you, like, there's not that, I'm sorry, there's not a comfy feeling in those places. Like, even St.
Uh-uh.
Peter's, like, we went to that. It's amazing to see, right? Like, some of those ruins I showed you, they're literally, did you see some of the size of the pillars we're standing by? Like bananas. Like, there's no way that normal humans built this stuff. Like, come on, get out of here with that. Like, there's just no way, you
Well,
know.
did they have help? That's what I'm saying. It's like,
I'm saying, yeah, because look at the size of these pillars, dude. Like,
but think
look
about it,
at this.
Heidi. The
Look at
whole
that.
thing that you and I always talk about with these demonic beings that are the
Hmm.
fallen ones, the Nephilim, whatever name you want to put on them, helped build these
Yes,
structures.
yes.
And it's
Solomon's,
like
yeah,
we go
Solomon's
right
temple.
in there, waltz right in, and it's,
Mhm.
I
Look at
mean,
how little we are. Like, I mean, this is gigantic. You know, this is,
and for
I mean,
what? Why
yeah.
did they need this majesty freaking temple to, because it was for these gigantic beings,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
exactly.
these
Exactly.
doors that are 50 feet tall. Why? Why do you need the pageantry and the accoutrement and all this stuff to be gigantic like that? Like,
Yeah.
why do you need that?
Yeah, that's why I put the extra photos in, because I was like, she'll like to see these, I think. So I
Man, it's
thought
just crazy. All the
it
courtyards
oh,
and the
it's and Versailles in Paris is bananas. Like, all you can
Mhm.
do is step back and go, holy crap. Or the Vatican, same. I didn't put all the photos, but I was like, this stuff, like that, if I knew, I wished I knew then what I know now, because I didn't. I was just a normal normie walking around with my dumb world until 2020. And then when that
Wow.
all happened in 2020, she left and everything else happened. And I was like, oh my gosh. And people are right. Like, it only takes one good conspiracy to unravel, and you really know it was a lie or whatever. And you're like, oh my gosh, everything is a lie.
It changes everything. And I
Yeah.
just today was getting my hair done, and my hair girl and I are tight. We both love conspiracies, but her new boyfriend thinks it's just redonkulous. And so he walked into the salon right in the middle of one of our conversations, and he was like, "Oh, you two again." And then he sits down in the chair across from me, just visiting or whatever. And he's like, "Do you really believe the stuff you talk about on your podcast? Do you really sincerely believe the stuff you talk about?" And I looked at him and I was like, there
Yeah.
is no room for me to have to believe anything when I see with my eyes and have found evidence to support. You're asking me, if you gave me a $20 bill in my hand right now, if I believe I have a $20 bill in my hand right now. It's like there is no
Right.
belief. There, the belief is like we're beyond that, because there's so
Hmm.
much evidence that you can actually go and look at and research to support these theories, quote unquote, that there isn't a need for belief.
Right. Yeah. No, I
I
agree.
don't
Sorry.
need to,
My
and
allergies are bad.
it's like it when you watch the towers fall for 9/11, and it's like boom 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 boom,
Hmm.
and then you watch a controlled demolition video and it's exactly
Yes.
a mirror image, and you're like, do you really believe it was an inside job?
Well, and
Like,
then
let's just
building
take,
seven, like, let's just do
like,
building
come
7.
on, Heidi.
It blew itself up.
Like, that's what I'm saying is like, so do you really believe, do
Yeah.
you really believe that everything is as hunky dory as they make it out to be? Do you really believe that?
Yeah, no.
Do you really
No.
believe we got sprayed like we were bugs for years
Mhm.
and had to cover our face and we're in bondage to these demons? and
I
had to
think
take
that
their
that
poison and do all these things. Like, do you really believe that's all that it was cracked up to be? I mean, the argument is so backwards. It's like, do I believe? Do I believe? Well, how the fuck can you sit there and actually believe what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, you know what happened in 2020 and you know where we're at today. And you know that everything was supposed to be all done and everything was supposed to be wrapped up, nice little package. And and the thing that got me was like, I'm a nurse and I am a logical, really logical person. I was reading the JAMA studies. I'm like, why are we re-wearing masks? This is a bad idea. They always say not to do this. They say don't touch your face. They say throw them away. If you touch it once, you got to get a new one, blah, 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 blah. So that was like the first part to me. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And
Well,
then,
just
yeah.
recently, I went a few days ago to visit my family in Ohio. And while I was there, my cousin kept puffing her inhaler like every couple of minutes. And I was like, "Are you good? Because we're about to be by the bonfire. Like, I don't want you to have a attack or something. Like, you've been puffing it a lot." And she was like, "Well, I could have swore I had COVID. And I took two COVID tests and they're both negative, but I have all the symptoms and I have this and I have that. And it's all just like when I had COVID, but the test keeps saying negative. So and she's just chilling with our whole family, contagious or not, whatever. We love her. She's family. Of course, we want her to be there. But a couple of years ago, they would have jumped
Oh,
like
yeah.
a New York second on telling her that she had COVID. The
Right.
problem is, and what I was trying to explain to them, is that the damn symptoms are the same as having a cold or
Oh,
having a
yeah.
congestive issue. So you're like, "Oh, I could have swore I had COVID." But none of the symptoms were adding up at the time. Like one of my cousins was like, "Well, I got like a sore throat and I was dehydrated and I couldn't even get up off the couch." And then the other cousin's like, "Well, I just kind of felt like I had the cold." And for me, I didn't really have any symptoms other than I lost my smell and taste for 3 months.
Mm.
So, what I'm trying to explain to them is there is no COVID because none of you all assholes have the same symptoms.
Mhm.
You all just got random fucking sicknesses, and the test picked up on whatever it is that you had and said it was COVID. There is such a
Or
thing
they
as,
sprayed us with something specific. But
yeah,
like
and it's
right
like our
now, I'm
bodies all went haywire in different ways.
I'm like itching and like a cold right now. Like maybe in that time I would have thought I had COVID. It's just pollen, right? Like it's high
Yeah,
pollen. Like
exactly.
I'm
You
having
know what I'm
struggles,
saying?
but it's high pollen count. And I'm like, how did we not? But like at that first one, only this one, the Delta. If I got the Delta and me and my husband both were so sick. Like I can't even, I was
Because
this
you
close.
got some mutated shit.
Oh, it was something. And I think, you know what though? I'm kind of grateful in a way and I was terrified because here's the thing. I wasn't 100% like I was still coming out of Weirdoville, like I was still only half awake. And then also I'm asthmatic and they say, "Oh, if you have that and you go to you got to go to the hospital." And I looked at my husband and I said, "Everybody that I know that's gone to the hospital died. So unless I'm going to die, and I mean I'm dying, not going to die. Like if I'm dying, then call 911. But otherwise, don't." And he was like, "That's terrifying." And I was like struggling. And I said, "Listen, everybody that I know, young and old, that went to the hospital died." I said, "I'm not going to the hospital." And he's like, "This sounds insane. You sound insane because you're a nurse and you know better." And I'm like, "I don't care. I'm not going." And I
I
was
don't know, Heidi. There was just so much stuff that's happened over these last couple of years that I just don't understand how people are still asking me if I believe. And, of course, there's some pompous assholes that are like, "Oh, well, have you seen a Bigfoot then?" And I'm like,
yeah,
you know what? I don't actually need to see a Bigfoot to know that there are people who have seen
right.
who didn't believe in it or who have experienced like a dog man or who have experienced like back in the 1800s there was no reason whatsoever for them to be writing about seeing mermaids in the sea and stuff.
Right.
Like, what the fuck reason on earth they weren't doing a TikTok, they weren't posting it on Facebook? What the fuck in the world reason would there be for them to document sightings of like weird creatures and stuff?
Right.
I don't actually have to experience it myself to know that there's something otherworldly going on.
Right.
And the Bible is such a supernatural text, and it tells us all about like weird creatures and like demons and you name it. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't know how people, I mean it's written. I don't know how people can even argue with it. My
Yeah.
brother was like, "Okay, well where's the bones? Where are the bones of the if they're spiritual creatures, you're not going to find fucking bones. Do you ever
Mm-hmm.
find ghost bones? Like what are
Or
you
they hit
talking
them,
about?"
like, or they hit them because the thing is, they did find a lot of giant bones, and the Smithsonian would constantly come in and take them. So,
I think he
you
was more
know,
talking about Bigfoot bones.
oh yeah,
And I'm
but
like, dude, if they're spiritual creatures and they're like they walk in between planes of existence,
mm-hmm.
yeah, you're probably not gonna find a fucking femur out in the middle of the woods. Okay? Like like you're asking me to explain to you the finite details of the spiritual world. No one knows for sure unless you've
Yep.
died and came back how that
Right.
works.
Yep.
So I just the point for me is I don't want to be ridiculed or questioned about things that I talk about or things that I know or have done episodes about and like do you really believe that? Because it makes me feel like they think it's a joke and that's the conspiracy
Right.
theorist bane of my existence is people thinking that all of this is just a joke and it's almost destroyed your family like
Mm-hmm.
demonic attachments and stuff like that. It's almost destroyed your family and then people are going to walk around like there is no such thing as God or devils or any of this. Yeah, there is and it's really serious. It can destroy your life.
Well, and then she told my mom one last thing that's really strange. And she was like crying. And she said, well, why won't I'm not the only one that never saw her again. For 5 years, no one has ever seen her again. And no one hardly speaks, like she will only pick and choose who she speaks to very briefly. My other daughter says it's like talking to a telemarketer person, like, hi, how are you today? I'm fine. How are you? Like that, it's like no feeling behind it. And so my mom asked her, well, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And she said, you wouldn't even know me anymore. And that freaked me out a little. Like I was like, that's a strange, strange thing to say to somebody, to your grandma. Okay. You wouldn't even know me anymore. What does that mean? Because you can change and you can evolve. And like how I told you, like I'm changing my spirituality or whatever, but I'm still me. I'm still Heidi. I'm still at the core level of me. Your personality is formed by the time you're 5, sometimes 7, but it's in there. It's done. You can make modifications, but like you are who you are, right? And for her to say that and act so differently, like even my daughter says, no, it's real. That's how she is now. Like it's like everything is happy in her world. She doesn't want any unhappy, loud people there. She doesn't want noisemakers or people that dare to be having a bad day or anything, and I'm like, this sounds like Gnostic happiness where you don't go to the doctor and you just believe and all that stuff. And I'm like, none of this
It
isn't
does
good.
sound really Gnostic.
Hmm. And I'm like, that's not great. I mean, you can be a
And it's
Gnostic.
also not sustainable or realistic
Yeah.
because there is beauty in suffering, as I've said before.
Hmm.
But also like it changes you maybe when you get married because you have other things on your mind, but you're still you unless you're in an
Right.
abusive relationship. And that's what
Right.
it comes down to is like I think marriage can like add to someone's life and maybe you change your value system because you have to think about another person all the time and what
Hmm.
they care about and what they love or dislike or whatever and you have to take that into consideration but it doesn't actually change
Right. Who
your
you are,
values and stuff like who you are like at the
your
core
core
of you
being. Yes.
like who you are
And you
unless
should never
you're
want to
in an
do that.
abusive relationship.
Yeah. You should never want to change so much that you aren't you anymore, right? That's not.
Yeah, like if you catch yourself drifting away from people you love, guess what? You're in an abusive relationship. And I'm not talking about friends because I've seen this happen so many times I can't even count. When you're single, you have a friend group, and then you get in a serious relationship or you get married, and those friends kind of drift off because they're still single and they want you to still be
Right.
single, and they give you bad ideas like just leave your husband because he didn't bring home the milk or something. Like, I'm not talking about that. Like, you might change and evolve in your friend groups and like become friends with other married people who understand, like, I have kids and I'm married, so I can't like go clubbing with you anymore. Like, some of those things might change, but you as a person, what movies you like, what music you like, things that are funny, that jokes that you tell, things like that, they don't ever change. They
No, it
never change.
shouldn't
It
be.
it
It
it,
shouldn't
it
be
shouldn't.
you. Yeah. It shouldn't be
Mm-mm.
your core humanity. Like, that's weird. And to
Like
just,
things like I love my mom
yeah,
shouldn't change.
no. And it does feel like a Faustian bargain to me. It's like very reminiscent of that. That was all she wanted, was to get married and have a family and not worry about money and blah blah blah. And she got all of that, but she left everything behind. Like, and even coming here, like, she had a storage shed full of like her prom dresses and like her, she was student body secretary jacket and just things like that, and she came here and threw it all in the garbage. And my daughter was like, what are you doing? Like, I wasn't there because I'm out at this point. And she said, well, I don't need any of that anymore. I don't even care about any of that. That was weird.
I'm telling you, Heidi, I think, my aunt actually, I think she wrote this song or she used to sing it all the time in church. And there are things that I said, like traumatic things like rape or trauma or drug addiction, that can open doors for you to get horrible attachments.
Hmm.
And my aunt had a drug addiction, and we were praying and praying and praying and trying to help her, and it was destroying us trying to help her. And she was not interested in changing what she was doing. And then my cousins, they said that she had an evil spirit on her, and she was just full of devils. Like, you just couldn't almost be around her, which is crazy because we all are super, super Christian. And so they went to church one Sunday and they just prayed deliverance for her, and they prayed deliverance for her. And they said, whatever that looks like, just deliverance for her. And then it was 4 days later, she passed away. Not saying your daughter's going to pass away or
Right,
whatever, but
right.
it's like it might not be what you think it should be or look like, but she does need deliverance. So it's like, okay, yeah, you get a call in the middle of the night. Oh, he's been cheating on me with da 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 down the street, or oh, he's been living a separate life, or
Yeah, a whole
whatever.
nother life. Who
Like,
knows?
whatever it happens to be. Like, just she's gonna be so sorry and so lonely later in life that she's ruined all of her family relationships, because husbands unfortunately can come and go, boyfriends, whatever, but you never get another mom and another grandma and siblings, and that you don't get those things over again.
Right. And you miss key things. Like, I know she's going to plan to tell her daughter that we just live too far away and that I couldn't come visit. Well, that kid isn't dumb. And most kids are going to grow up and say BS and find that person, right? At some point, she's probably going to look for me. And I am not going to concede with the crap that they're filling her head with, because that means I wouldn't love her enough to just travel on a plane. Are you insane? Like, yes, I would. Yes, I would. So,
She's
hopefully
gonna
she'll
tell
see
her
these
kid a bunch of
podcasts.
crazy shit.
Hmm.
Let me
And,
see. I
and
have something here. Hang on. I wonder if it'll let me share my sound.
I think if I stop, maybe if I stop share because I'm done, maybe it will.
But sometimes it'll share video but not share sound. Let me see if it'll
Oh,
let me. I think we'll continue our conversation in the after show, but I think we should end it on this note here. This is this song that my aunt always used to sing. La, ta, 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 ta. Share
and
sound.
I'm going to say this really quickly. If you're struggling with addiction, you should definitely seek out help because Julia lost her aunt and I lost my brother to addiction. So if you are struggling with any kind of abuse, seclusion abuse, or whatever kind of abuse or addiction, definitely seek out help, please.
Yeah, and maybe somebody needs to hear this right now. And I think it's really strong and powerful that we play this song here to end it up, and then we'll talk a little bit afterwards. But this is my aunt when she was struggling through addiction. She was still singing at church. And then she got so bad off into addiction that she couldn't even show up to church anymore. But this is the one song that I'll always remember her singing. And I love it so much. I think it's so fitting. Let's see if it'll play it. Can you hear it?
Uh-huh.
Does it sound clear?
Yep.
This was her at a service one Sunday.
Lift your head, weary sinner. The river is just.
Oh no! Why?
Stop.
I clicked off of it.
Oh,
It's
there
a
we go.
short song.
It's okay.
Lift your head, weary sinner. The river is just a head. Down the path of forgiveness, salvation's waiting there. You built a mighty fortress, 10,000 burdens high. Love is here to lift you up, here to lift you high. If you're lost and wondering, come stumbling in like a prodigal child. See the walls start crumbling, let the gates of glory open wide. Yes, let them open wide. Thank you, Jesus. All who strayed and walked away, unspeakable things you've done. Fix your eyes on the mountain, let the past be dead and done. You saints and sinners, you can't outrun God. Whatever you've done can overcome the power of the blood. If you're lost and wondering, come stumbling in like a prodigal child. See the walls start crumbling and the gates of glory open wide. If you're lost and wrecked again, come stumbling in like a prodigal child. See the walls start crumbling and the gates of glory open wide. Oh yes, open wide. Open wide. We have chains this morning. Let the chains begin to fall. Hallelujah. Let the chains fall. Let the chains fall. Oh, let the chains fall. Oh, let the chains fall. Let the chains fall. Prodigal child. See the walls start crumbling, let the gates of glory open wide. If you're lost and wrecked again, come stumbling in like a prodigal child. See the walls start crumbling. Let the gates of glory open wide. Let the gates of glory open wide. Let the gates of glory open wide.
That was awesome.
So powerful. I'm telling you, girl.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. It's
And
good.
it just doesn't, it looks different for everyone, but if there's somebody out there listening right now that needs deliverance, there's only one person who can give it to you.
Yep. We have to all get unburdened, whatever that burden is. Because,
Mm-hmm.
like I tell everyone at my mental health facility I work at, when they get upset and they say, well, I hate it here, I had a bad day, I always smile and say, be grateful you had this day here, because my brother didn't get that. And that's why I work here.
Yep. And I think you're such a loving, beautiful person, Heidi. And you don't deserve the mental torture. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve it.
I'm just hoping that if it doesn't hit her, that we can help other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we can do.
And I love you so much. And I think this was very important for us to get together today. And I know that most of the listeners already know where to find you.
Yes.
But if they don't, tell everyone where they can find the Unfiltered Rise podcast.
Absolutely. I am Heidi Love. I'm everywhere podcasts are served, and I'm unfiltered because this is raw and this is my real life. And I just put it out there to help people. And there's really no other agenda. And yes, I believe all the things I talk about, including giants.
Yeah, me too.
So,
Me
yep.
too. I believe it all.
Right.
And with that being said, everyone,
Yep.
thanks so much for listening. And Heidi and I will just catch you on the next one.
Bye.